Ladies and gentlemen, the point of this video is going to be walking you through, I suppose it's more so for the gents, walking you through the transformation from this guy at point A to this guy at point B. You might describe this guy on the left as weak, feminine, he lacks a sense of purpose, he's undisciplined, right? You might resonate with some of these. You also don't have to be wholly this guy to get something out of this tutorial, right? All of us have an inner bitch and all of us have an inner beast, and it's a matter of like turning down this knob and turning up this knob. And what I want to do in this video is essentially walk you through how I did that, because the majority of this transformation took place in about 6 months. And so everything that I'm going to walk through in this video, I don't know how long it's going to be. Everything that I'm going to walk through is essentially what I wish someone would have just kind of packaged into one video tutorial to kind of get me moving in the right direction. So some other things that this guy over here at point A is weak, feminine, no purpose, or lacking a sense of purpose and direction, and that makes him soft, yeah? And you can tell, like, look, you can tell. You can tell in his face. Right? He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what his purpose is. But I will mention, there is a glimmer of, I know I could be more. There is a glimmer of, I know I have potential. And I know that it's my responsibility to manifest that potential. What else have we got here? I've got a couple of notes over here. He's also a soy boy. You know, what you might describe as a soy boy. He's just soft in all, it kind of oozes from him. And again, you can just see that in the way that he is. Now, contrast that, or another word that might come to mind, a Jeffrey, right? For those of you who are familiar with Hamza. Okay, this guy. Like, this guy is a completely different dude. And like I said, the majority of this transformation took place in 6 months. Now, this guy, he's strong mentally and physically. He's masculine. He's way more masculine than this guy over here on the left. He's on purpose. He has a sense of direction. He knows what he's doing. I heard Chris Williamson say the other day that women are attracted to a man who's comfortable in his own skin and knows where he is going. And again, you can just tell in the way, like in the expression, right? It's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is, but you can tell in the expression of this guy here. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have a sense of purpose, whereas this guy has found a sense of meaning and purpose, and he has a sense of direction. He's just ready for it. Okay, what else? This guy is on the path to becoming an Adonis. Right? And I don't think this is necessarily a destination. It's more so a journey, or maybe, you know, it's the eternal striving to become the Adonis. And this guy by no means is a finished product. He's on purpose. He's disciplined, right? He knows how to remain consistent. And I'm going to walk through, like, if you have trouble with being disciplined, you have trouble with being consistent, I'm going to walk you through why that might be. I want to really unpack it and go deep here. And just help you make this transition or transformation as quickly and as easily as possible. That's really the goal, all right? And in a word, this dude's just hard, right? Hard as nails, man. Like, when this guy's working out in the gym, you can see it. You can sense it. People are intimidated by the work ethic that this guy has. And his work ethic, word of his work ethic literally spreads throughout the gym, where people who've never seen me work out will come and speak to me about the intensity of my workouts, because people have been talking because they've seen me in the gym putting in the hard yards. All right, 1 second. My bad, I just had to put the aircon on. Okay, so we've kind of got a definition of point A and point B and some adjectives that kind of describe the difference between the two. Now, a quick note, right? Like I said before, this is not the final form. It's not like you do this transformation and then you're done. I think that's one of the misconceptions, is if you want this to be a sustainable transformation, you don't want to just like become this guy for 6 months or like a couple of weeks or whatever, and then loop back around to becoming your inner bitch or your inner beta. You need to recognize that there's like a constant pull making you go this way, like a constant pull. It's like this is the default, is just coming back to this guy. And so it really does take a lot of effort and some systems, right? Some systems and some mindset shifts and some environmental shifts. And I'm going to walk you through what those shifts are in order to counteract the kind of default pull back to this bitch, and yeah, counteract that so that you're always putting in the work, but in a way that's sustainable, so as to remain this guy as long as possible, if not indefinitely. So it's not a complete transformation, you're done. It's a process. I have some people in my life who've kind of used that language as an excuse, the idea that, I'm on a journey, and I don't want to use that to excuse lack of results, but you do need to recognize that you need to opt into the game, and it's an infinite game. It's a forever game, if you want this to be sustainable, which I assume you do. Okay, so all of that said, let's just clean this up real quick. I'm going to clean up the whiteboard. All right, so I've just cleaned this up a little bit. There are essentially 3 pillars to making this transformation, and those 3 pillars are mental, environmental. I only just realized environmental is actually in that word. And then kind of physique, which is a combination of diet and workouts. And I'm gonna walk through each of these 3 pillars. 1, 2, and 3. Sick. So, first things first, mental. If you don't, you can think about this as like the underlying software. If you don't fix the underlying software, that's going to bleed into the way that you construct your environment, or the beliefs that lead you to construct your environment in a certain way, and also the underlying beliefs that are determining how you go about your diet and how you go about your workouts, then you're kind of screwed anyway. One quick idea that I'm going to introduce you to is like a lot of people, you can think about, we've got this pyramid, or it's kind of like it's almost like an iceberg, and we've got depth here, and this is the specific or superficial, and then this is the deep, and this is like the level of skill. So you can have very deep skills and you can have very superficial skills. And a lot of the time, I think in a variety of different disciplines, people focus on the superficial skills like, oh, okay, let me YouTube, what's the best diet for losing weight? What's the, and okay, maybe I need to go on keto, or maybe I need to try like higher protein or like slow carb or paleo or something like this. Or, what's the best workout split? Is it push, pull, legs, or is it blah, 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 whatever? And it's kind of like all of that stuff's important, but it's more of a specific, superficial, not to say it's not important, but superficial skill. And if you just focus on that and you don't get the underlying deep skills down, like the mindset and the habits or environment, you're screwed in a nutshell. And this is what people mean when they say like mental masturbation. Mental masturbation is just watching a whole bunch of YouTube videos that expose you to novelty and new information, and you convince yourself by saying, I'm improving, by just soaking up in new information, thinking that you're like learning the new secrets. And it's not like this is exclusive to certain people. We all fall into this trap from time to time of mental masturbation and just digesting more and more information and thinking that we're leveling up. But we're operating on the superficial level of the skills when really we need to dive deeper and do the hard work. And that's really the mindset stuff and the habits and environmental changes. So that's why I'm going to start with the mental. We're going to break that down. Then we're going to jump over to the environmental and like lifestyle/habits. And then lastly, the actual physiques. And we'll break that down into diet and then also workouts. Okay. So mindset. Let's unpack this. So the first thing that you have got to kind of ask yourself or recognize, you almost have to do like an autopsy or what is it? An accountability check. Goggins would call it, taking a long, hard look at yourself in the accountability mirror. What is it that you believe? What's the messaging that you're telling yourself, right? What does this guy say to himself over and over again? Or what has he been saying to himself for the past, 4 years that has led him to being in this shape? Now, I'll just mention, right? At this point, I did have a little bit of muscle on me, like I had worked out in the past. You can see there's like the outline of some abs down here. but you can still tell this guy's just soft, right? And you can tell it in his face and in his jawline and all that. Now, what's the messaging that this guy has been repeating to himself? What's the mindset that he's been, kind of the software that he's been running? And a lot of it is, I'm enough, right? That's kind of like the bird's eye view perspective. I'm enough. I'm okay. Like, not that bad. And the hard and fast kind of truth here, the brutal truth is, dude, you are all of these things, right? You're weak, you're feminine, you lack a sense of purpose and direction, you're clearly undisciplined. Like, look at you, right? That's no one wants to look like that. Okay, and no one. It's not so much. It's not just the aesthetic, right? No one wants to look like that. It's more so no one wants to feel like what that look represents. Yeah, and so if we come back to here, if we come back to the mindset, right? I'm gonna introduce you to this idea that I just call the perfection paradox. So you need to get clear on this idea that you're actually, I'm never enough, and you never will be enough, but that's okay. It's actually okay. And this is what I mean by opting into the game, right? This is what I would refer to as the infinite game. I'm actually going to pull up an Instagram post where I had a caption that kind of unpacked this. Give me one sec. All right, I'm actually just going to read it here. So, my brother, you are not enough, and you never will be. Welcome to the game of life. Embrace it, the eternal state of limitation and inadequacy, but forever properly directed towards and in pursuit of more, of better, of an ever-receding goal, the eternal state of proper human being. So, essentially, let me just pause one more sec. Okay, so you have to be okay with forever being inadequate, and there's always going to be an ideal toward which you should be striving. And so that's the first kind of software switch that you have to make. Not just repeatedly, I suppose, swallowing the convenient blue pill that, yes, I am enough, I'm okay, I'm not that bad. Like, oh, I can see a little outline of my abs, or, this, I'm okay compared to some other people who I don't admire at all. It's like, well, how do you compare to the people who you do admire? They're the ideal for which you should be striving. And so first things first, the perfection paradox, I'm never enough, and that's okay. So in a way, it's like you are forever enough insofar as you're never going to be enough, okay? And what makes you enough is, it's like what makes you enough is proper orientation toward the ideal. And look, the next question is like, okay, if this is point A where you are and point B is the ideal, you have to get clear on what this is. And it can actually be quite difficult to define. But what I would do and what I would recommend is just noticing, who do you admire? That's a really good place to begin. And so Ziz was the first person that really caught my eye as like, whoa, there's something here in a no homo type of way that I'm really attracted to. I'm really attracted to the physique. I'm really attracted to the transformation and also the psychological transformation that went along with his physical transformation. Who else do I admire? There were people like Jeff Seid. There were people like, Russ and Jordan Peterson and other people, Goggins, Now, all of these, you can start to kind of list out attributes or qualities of these people. But the whole point being here that you are always, you're never going to actually reach point B. And that's what I was mentioning before, like the game never finishes. So the first thing is you have to be okay with never being enough. Okay, the next mindset shift that you have to make is, okay, if I'm okay with never being enough, and I'm going to opt into this game of recognizing I'm forever inadequate, but there's an ideal for which I want to strive, then you also have to take on the mindset that self-love is self-discipline. Okay, we, in our modern era, we get a lot of like, I had a girlfriend who used to tell me all the time, like, live a little. And it used to grind my gears so hard. And also, by the way, like this live a little messaging, it was the girlfriend. Like, no, I don't have anything against her. Yeah, I have nothing but love in hindsight. But it was the girlfriend with whom I was with when when this guy was my current state of being. Yeah. So live a little. It's like I was trying to escape this mindset of live a little, love yourself, and to love yourself in what was meant was kind of like, eat the donut and take it easy, And it's like, I don't want to take it easy, right? Because I'm eyes wide open to all of the ways in which I'm inadequate and I'm not enough and I'm not good enough. And there's a reason why I don't have good self-esteem. It's not like there's an issue with my self-esteem. It's that there's an issue with the way that I'm behaving that leads me to having low self-esteem. I earned the low self-esteem because I wasn't doing what my conscience knew I was supposed to be doing, which was becoming a hard, a hard, I don't really want to use the language here, but MF, right? A hard man, right? Goggins type energy, right? And Jordan Peterson type energy and Ziz type energy. I don't give a right? That type of energy. Okay, so you have to recognize that self-love is not just following immediate gratification. It's not just lapsing and like, oh, I'm going to treat myself and la la la. Self-love is like, hey, what is my goal? And I'm going to ruthlessly, I'm going to give a definition here. Yeah, self-love equals ruthlessly prioritizing your potential, which is to say, whatever point B is, right? Pulling you closer and closer to that ideal. And sometimes that means cutting out certain habits. Sometimes it means cutting out certain people, and we're going to get onto that in a little bit. But that's a second kind of mindset shift here. First being you have to opt into the game of being never enough. Second, you have to recognize that self-love is self-discipline. And I suppose this is also like rule something in Jordan Peterson's book of like, take care. If you had a kid, right? If you had a kid and you're trying to do what's best for the kid, I think this is also a new definition or a definition that might help as well. Love equals doing what's best for someone. So think about if you have a kid, you don't just give that kid anything and everything that they ask for. What you do is you say, okay, I know that you want the ice cream. I know that you want to just have the quick dopamine hit. I know you want to play video games for like 18 hours a day. But when you love this person and you want to take care of them, what you do is you prioritize their potential. And you say, hey, I want you to enjoy yourself, but I also am going to do what's best for you. And I'm going to give you some structure and some discipline to make sure that your potential is made manifest. And you can think about like that parent. Sometimes I see parents and their kids are like extremely fat. And I just think, you absolute bastard, right? Like you've screwed this kid up. And this kid has this latent potential. And it's your responsibility as the parent to give this kid the necessary structure to manifest their potential. And instead, you're projecting your lack of discipline and I would say lack of self-love onto your kid. It's like, let me squander my kid's potential so as to legitimize my own fatness, right? Because usually the parents are rather fat as well. Okay, so we've got perfection paradox. We've got self-love equals self-discipline. Next kind of mindset piece of code that we need to install is you matter. Right? I think we get caught up, especially young boys get told that they're not really all that necessary, right? Like, what do we really need young boys for anyway, right? Women can handle themselves, and it's a lie. It's straight up a lie. So you, in a very real way, I think it's worth noting that you are the creator of the future. And that's huge responsibility, right? So again, this diagram is so beneficial, at least in my kind of worldview and conception. The world is either going to tilt closer to, metaphorical heaven, like progress, or it's going to tilt closer to metaphorical hell, right? This is like the current state, and this here is the future, okay? And what determines whether we go up or down is literally you and your decisions. You're the thing. This is you. Your decisions matter. And one step further, it's your potential as the divine individual, so to speak, that's going to dictate whether we go further up this way or further down this way. So you and your decisions matter, right? And if we have enough boys remaining weak and feminine, and not strong, not hard, not stoic, not capable of facing the vicissitudes of life and thriving in them, then we end up defaulting down to here. And so you have to understand that this lie that like you as, say, a young man, you're not really all that important, you're not really all that necessary, it's a straight up lie. You do matter in a very divine and sacred way. Your choices are going to influence the unfolding of the future and whether that future is going to be good and it's going to help us progress, or whether we're going to kind of head downhill. Okay, now one step beyond that, it doesn't just matter, you don't just matter in because that same thinking you could apply to men and women, but I want to make it more specific to boys and young men becoming strong, okay? So women and children are vulnerable. Some unhinged feminist is going to disagree here, and whatever, they'll probably they're not going to do themselves any favors in terms of finding a suitable mate so as to heal their trauma. But women and children are vulnerable, and women, when they have children, are vulnerable, especially vulnerable when they're pregnant. Okay, and so in order for a woman to have a child, she needs to feel safe and secure, or provided for and protected, right? Which is why you hear this expression, the ultimate man becoming a provider protector. This inner word is becoming strong. All right, provider protector isn't just having cash. It's also being a provider protector mentally and emotionally, and almost spiritually, right? Being able to provide a home, a secure and strong home base for your woman. And it's when she feels safe and secure, it's when she feels provided for and protected for, that she's ready to then have a child. So look at it from this way. Do you just think of like a woman that you care about in your life? It doesn't have to be someone that you're romantically involved with, right? Think about a woman that you care about. Might be your sister, might be a friend. If they want to have kids, do you think that they should be able to have kids? Because I think so, right? And that, in a way, I'm like the ultimate feminist, right? I believe that women who want to have kids should be able to have kids, right? Now, in order to have kids, right, they need to find men, not boys. They don't have sex with boys. They don't have long-term monogamous relationships which provide the foundation for a family. They don't start families with boys, aka weak and feminine. Right? This girls and women do not have families with this guy. Right? They want this guy. Right? They want to feel provided for, protected for. They want a guy who signals through his character, I've got what it takes to make sure that you and the child are safe. Okay? And the more of these guys that we have, the worse it is for women. And also the worse it is for the population, because women then don't have children. And then we have population collapse, and you can look into that in your own time. But we in order to sustain the population, we actually need every woman to have a minimum of 2 children, right? And that's what's going to sustain the population generation to generation. And if women on average have less than 2 children, because say there's this oversupply of weak feminine boys as opposed to strong masculine men who are capable of suffering and taking care of and providing and protecting for a woman and children, then we actually have lots of unintentional childlessness. And a great documentary for this, by the way, if you're interested, is Birth Gap. Would highly recommend. Essentially, there are plenty of women who are getting to the point where they've been waiting to find the right person. They've been waiting to find the person who makes them feel safe and secure, emotionally, mentally, financially, etc., provided for and protected for. They wait. They never find him, because our culture has just been telling these boys, hey, you're all good. You are enough, my little beautiful snowflake. Or you're not really needed anyway. Like, go take your toxic masculinity somewhere else. And so they're never socialized into becoming strong masculine men, right? They're socialized into opting for this weak feminine BS. And who suffers the most? It's women. It's women who end up never finding someone that they feel safe and secure with, such that they can have children. Okay, so all that said, let me just gather myself here and we'll move on. Okay, so to quickly summarize what we've covered so far with respect to mindset, there are kind of 4 key differences between this guy, the Jeffrey, and this guy here, the Adonis. So this guy on the left thinks, I am enough. I'm a perfect little snowflake. He's got, mama's voice in his head saying, oh, my darling, blah, 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 like, you don't need to change. Whereas this guy here on the right knows, I am not enough and I forever will be inadequate, but that's okay. I'm going to opt into the game of improvement. This guy here on the left thinks that nothing really matters. Like, I'm just like a clump of cells on a big rock hurtling through space. And so, like, why not? Why not just indulge in gluttony? Why not just masturbate and enjoy myself doing that, right? Nothing really matters in the grand scheme of things. Whereas this guy on the right has a very different perspective. That is, I matter, right? I matter as a creator of the future. I have a divine spark within me. Whereas this guy does not. And I think that's a core source of this sense of purpose. And you could see it, right, in the eyes. It's like, yo, I'm a man on a mission, compared to this guy who's like, I don't even know what I'm doing, man. This guy here on the left, he believes in this notion of toxic masculinity, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with feminine boys. Whereas this guy here on the right understands my masculinity matters, yeah? It's important that I become a strong masculine man as opposed to a weak feminine boy. And why that matters, in part, is because this guy here on the left thinks men and women are equality, all fundamentally the same. It's like masculine man, feminine man, same thing, big difference, doesn't really matter. Masculine woman, feminine woman, big difference, blah, blah, blah. This guy on the right understands that men and women are not the same, and that's why they select for different things in the opposite sex. And women select for provider protectors. Women select for masculine men who are capable of making them feel safe and secure such that they can start a family. And that's important. If you are a feminist in the purest sense, you believe that women that you care about should be able to find high quality men who are capable of making them feel secure, safe, and protected for and provided for, then you understand that men and women are not the same, and that young boys have the responsibility to become this guy here on the right, guy B, point number 2, whatever, in order for both women and children to be taken care of, right? And to be loved, right? It's almost like to love women and children is for you to take on this transformation, all right? Whereas to be a selfish little hedonistic glutton is to say, I am enough, and to stay this guy, and to just play video games, watch porn, indulge in like fleeting pleasures. You know, you go out every bloody weekend and take, not that that's what this guy was doing, but I know people who just go out, they live for the weekend and the little, you know, the little party drugs that they have. And it's like, dude, you are so off course. And they're the same type of people who'll be saying equality, toxic masculinity, nothing really matters. You know, I'm just a worm on this big rock. They're like, and they're also the same people who'll tend to shit on religion. And it's like, well, maybe you need a bit of religion or spirituality in your life. Okay. So that's the mental side of things. So from here, that's like the first pillar, right? The first pillar was mental. And I've broken it down into those 4 kind of key differences here between the weak feminine point A and the strong masculine point B. From here, I want to move on to environment. Oh, actually, one more thing that I might mention, right? Now, it's not just a matter of knowing that there's a difference between what this guy's beliefs and this guy's beliefs, right? It's a matter of going, okay, all of us kind of have these voices in our head, and all of us kind of have these voices in our head. And what we want to do is turn this down and turn this up. And the way that you do that is you are uniquely positioned to make a choice. And you can control your environment, right? Which is to say, you can control the knobs here that turn this kind of messaging down and this type of messaging up. And so that's why I want to progress now from mental to environmental, because once you know the mindset shift that you want to make, you now need to implement that via taking control of your environment. And it's like, here's your mindset, yeah? Your mindset, a mentor of mine once said, not that I ever met him, but like I learned from him when I was getting into business, is garbage in, garbage out. And it's like, if you want high quality output, you want to improve the output of your mindset, then and also like your actions, right? Everything that comes downstream, then you need to improve the inputs, right? And the way that you improve the inputs, I'm going to walk you through now. All right, so there are 2 parts to taking control of your inputs or your environment. The first is your physical environment. And then your second, we're going to break it down into social environment. So obviously there are different ways of thinking about this, but this is a way that has kind of helped me identify what are the blocks, right? What are the blocks? If I decide that I want to make this transition and I want to become more and more this guy and less this guy, what are the blocks that are stopping me from actually doing that? And then breaking it down into, okay, physical blocks and social blocks. So the first is that when it comes to the physical, you have got to do a novelty detox, all right? And what I mean by this is that, novelty detox and getting rid or turning down dopamine short circuits. So there are a number of different sources in our lives in the modern era where things are trying to short circuit our dopamine reward system, right? It's like we have a reward system that has evolved over eons to produce masculine men, strong men, and we're short-circuiting them and instead resulting in more and more of these. And as an example, right, we have things like porn, right? Think about, in order to have an orgasm or to earn an orgasm in the past, you had to become the type of man that would be attractive enough to a woman such that you would earn that intense neurochemical reward, right? Of that is an orgasm. And nowadays you can literally, like, within seconds, couple of quick movements of your thumbs, and then all of a sudden you're getting the reward that your body used to only give you when you would put in the hard yards and suffer to become someone worthy of having earned that reward. So it's like porn. You have to cut out porn. You have to cut out porn. And now how exactly you do that, that's up to you, but you have to cut out porn. You have to also cut out shorts, right? Like every time you indulge in one of these habits, you are screwing with your capacity. It's like you are completely obliterating your capacity to delay gratification. And it's not just you might be thinking, I just need to be more disciplined. And it's not that simple. It's not that you aren't disciplined enough to delay gratification. Oftentimes it's that you haven't taken control of your inputs well enough, and therefore your capacity on like a biological or neurological level is severely impinged upon, because you're just exposing yourself to novelty all the time by way of porn, by way of shorts. Like, get rid of TikTok. Don't be getting sucked into Instagram shorts like you should, or YouTube shorts. You should have some kind of time limit, like a screen time limit. And even something as simple as like color, right? Like my iPhone is designed to try and keep me on there. These apps, everything down to the micro details, is designed to try and keep you stuck on the platform. And you have to know this. You just have to have this level of awareness that goes, okay, well, there are some really easy things that I can make sure that I do so that I don't completely and utterly fry my neurobiology, such that I can actually delay gratification and sacrifice, right? And so here we go. So porn, shorts, the color on your iPhone, there's a really simple, like, just look into accessibility, grayscale. My iPhone is always on grayscale, and it makes a massive difference. You wouldn't really realize it. Visuals as well. So we get caught up well, at least a lot of us, I think, get caught up looking at things, and we want to see new things. Like, one of our most stimulating senses, or the senses that can really capture us, is the visual. And so what you might try when you're on YouTube, say, for example, when you're eating food or like eating a meal, is you actually cannot watch anything. And all you can do is listen. So you have to throw on like an audiobook, or you have to throw on something that's kind of engaging just on an auditory level, as opposed to relying on the visual stimulus, right? You look at YouTube videos these days and it's like I know the YouTube game, right? Every 2 seconds, there has to be a new thing that kind of pops into your visual field to kind of keep you engaged. You want to get rid of that. You want to be the type, you want to design and take control of your dopamine reward system, and then recalibrate it so that it's not only going to focus on things that give it a dopamine hit every 2 seconds, right? And so a good way to reset that is getting rid of those visuals. And an example of that is actually not looking at YouTube videos when you're eating and only listening to things, or limiting the visual stimulation and the novelty that you get from it. And you can apply the same thing to auditory. So I found that this guy, right, dude at point A, he always wanted to listen to a fat drop, right? He would just live for the electronic music that would have a fat drop. Whereas this guy, he kind of learnt over time that he didn't want that quick dopamine hit that comes from a really like fat drop and bass and build up and whatnot. It's like, let me practice finding the beauty in something like classical music. Let me find beauty in something that's a little bit more progressive and less of just like a massive, like, oh, I feel so good, that massive kick drum and bass line. And so you can also apply this to tones. So like, for example, when I began deliberately taking control of these inputs, I don't want to listen to tracks that give me a massive dopamine hit, right? I want to actually proactively learn to enjoy the almost monotonous. And so you can search for like meditation music, and this is the type of thing you'll find is these consistent kind of wavy tones or atmospheric auditory landscapes, but there's no big fat drop. And again, it's like taking control of this novelty. I don't want this novelty. I want to reset my dopamine system. It's because this is the underlying hardware, yeah? I want to take control of the underlying hardware that actually allows me to execute on the diet, on the physique, and also on other things in my life where I can actually sacrifice and stay consistent and focused as opposed to just itching for my next little bloody dopamine hit or my novelty hit. Okay, cool. So let me just gather my bearings again. One more thing that I'll add here is like, what are some other things that you can do to reset this this kind of dopamine reward system? And you might hear some like personal development or improvement YouTubers describe this as a dopamine detox. Things like meditation, right? Everyone knows that when you actually try and sit down for just 10 minutes and do nothing, like your body is itching. It's like, I need my hit, bro. And so meditation can be a really good reset. And I used to hear some people say, oh, you got to meditate for 20 minutes. You got to meditate for 30 minutes. Awesome. But I'm most consistent when I just say, all right, bro, just do 10 minutes. Just do 10 minutes. If you can do 10 minutes and then stay consistent with it, that's way better than going for 30 minutes and then only being able to stick with it for a week. So keep that in mind as well. You got to let go of perfection. That's another mindset thing here. It's like we oftentimes will use the standard of perfection as an excuse for giving up on progression toward the ideal, right? That's a really important note. So you have to recognize that as you go through this journey from, weak and feminine to strong and masculine, you are going to have lapses. You are going to lapse back into this dude. And when you do, if you just have the standard of perfection, you're going to hit the fuck it button, and then you're just going to kind of give up and default into this guy on the left. When what you need to do is go, okay, there are going to be instances where I don't live up to the ideal. And when that happens, what makes me successful is catching it ASAP and then turning it around and focusing as best I can on getting, like, the only thing to do when you fall off the horse is get back on that damn horse. And in that way, there's only feedback and adjustment as opposed to failure. Failure is giving up. Failure is accepting point A. Okay, so meditation, some other things here. Meditation, journaling, as opposed to, right, like before you go to bed, instead of just watching something, journaling, like check in with yourself. What is going on in my mind? What exactly is the kind of bitch voice in my head saying? Getting that onto paper so it's kind of like you have a grasp of it, and then reinforcing over and over this kind of messaging over here of, I'm not enough, but that's the game that I want to play. Okay. So meditation, journaling, walking as well. Again, walking, and not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be surrounded by stimulus. Just go for a walk and be with yourself, uncomfortable as that might be, without any of these kind of dopamine hits coming at you from left, right, and center. Like, don't listen to those big fat drops. Like, literally just listen to the sound of nature for like 10 minutes or something. And again, if you are uncomfortable with that, you're the exact person that should be doing that. I mentioned like this kind of tonal music, if you can call it that. So you want to be practicing de-novelty. So like getting rid of novelty and like sitting with the mundane. And that's what's going to allow you to kind of reset the underlying neurobiology that is necessary to make the transition. And if you don't do that, it's like, it doesn't matter what software you try and install, your hardware is screwed from the jump. So in order to take control of that hardware, you have to take control of your physical environment. And, just a couple of really easy things. Download those apps that have, delete those apps that have all of that short, quick, fast novelty, stimulation. Like, don't be watching those YouTube videos that are playing into that as well. Look at the YouTube videos that are long form and that aren't extremely stimulating, and that you're actually learning, you're watching it because you're learning something deep, as opposed to, like I'm getting my little dopamine hit, like a little junkie. Get rid of the porn. absolutely have to get rid of the porn. And, maybe one way of getting rid of the porn is actually listen to your body and your conscience. When you watch porn, your body should be screaming to you, like, I should not be doing this. Yeah? Because I don't know whether this helps, but like that girl that you're looking at, that's someone's daughter. Right? Imagine if that was your daughter. And then you're providing the demand for other people's daughters who are likely traumatized in some way, shape, or form to go ahead and put their body or give their body like that, right? So do you really want, like, if that, knowing that that's someone's daughter who's likely traumatized and in need of love, and you're getting your quick little hit of instant gratification, right? You should be ashamed, and you should soak in that shame. And when you soak in that shame, that should give you the necessary impetus or motivation to stop watching that porn. Instead of being like, oh, women's liberation, like, let women do what they want, and this is an empowered porn star. No, that's trauma. That's trauma. That's a lack of love and guidance for this girl who's now selling her body online. It's tragic. Okay, so the second element of your environment that you need to take control of is social. And I want you to think about it, or it's not that I want you, I would recommend think about it like this, and this was very useful for me at least, is there are two types of people. Type 1 and type 2. And type 1, right, this is your current state. This is your ideal state. Type 1, they are going to try and pull you down this way. And oftentimes it comes from a place of them legitimizing their own inadequacies. And it's like the fat parent that makes their kid fat because it makes them feel better about themselves. Bloody child abuse. Versus there's other people who are going to pull you up towards point B. They're going to say from a place of love, hey, I see your potential, man, and I want that potential to come out and be made manifest. And so I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to push you up here. And when you fall off, I might actually like exercise some tough love with you and be like, come on, man. Like I know that you could be better, and I'm going to hold you to that standard. Think about your son, right? When you have a son and he drops the ball, you're not going to be, you're forever perfect just as you are. There's no such thing as sin, right? To sin is to not fulfill your potential. You're going to say to your son, come on, son, there is more to you. There is more to you, and I'm going to hold you accountable to manifesting and actualizing your potential and becoming the ideal, the point B, right? As opposed to being the beta. Okay, so you have to recognize then every single person that you're spending time with, they're either going to be type 1 that's pulling you back towards or away from your goals, or they're going to be the type of person who's pulling you towards your goals. Now, once you know that, and you can kind of think about, these people that you're spending time with, are they actually helping you get towards your goal? Are they actually helping you manifest your potential? You now kind of have a criteria for figuring out who you should be spending your time with and who you shouldn't. And I'll mention here that no one wins if your potential loses. No one wins if your potential loses. So if you squander your potential, my bad. If you squander your potential so as to appease someone, right? To make them feel better about themselves, right? Like you break on your diet, you break on your workout because this other person isn't holding themselves to the ideal, and they want your breaking of your striving upwards to legitimize their inadequacy. Nobody wins. Nobody wins. And this really hopefully comes back to some of those mindset shifts, right? You matter and your potential matters. And more specifically, as a young man, your masculine potential matters. So anyone who's not helping you manifest and actualize that masculine potential, you're not helping anyone them nor you by spending time together. And once you realize that, it's actually a form of love. It's a form of love to let go. You have different paths. And when they are ready, they will choose what their point B is, and they'll aim for their point B. And maybe then you can work together towards striving to your ideals. But until then, to let go is to love, or to love is to let go. And so you have to be ruthlessly loving to yourself and to your potential and to being as a whole, right? To love, to act in a loving way towards being, towards the world, is again to prioritize that upward trajectory. And if you believe and you install the software necessary to believe that you and your potential and your masculine potential is important to actualize, then to spend time with people who are pulling you down it's a sin. It's a sin. Okay, so you have to let people go, and you have to have your eyes wide open to, hey, I actually love myself and you too much for us to be kind of wallowing in our blue pill chosen ignorance, right? The comfortable lies and the comfortable like acceptance messaging BS instead of let's make it happen, right? Like let's both improve. Okay, so the next thing is you've all heard this before, right? You're the average of the 5 people that you spend time with. Now, I used to think, right, I didn't have very many people who were this guy, if anyone, right? Like, I didn't have a strong masculine, I wouldn't say a very strong masculine father figure, and that's nothing against my father. Like, I honor him and what he's done for me, very much so, and I have a lot of love for him. But he wasn't a very masculine man, and he isn't a very masculine man. And we actually have quite different definitions of masculine, but I would define masculine as strong, right? Strong and stoic, provider, protector. Now, if you don't have, and like, it's not like I had a plethora of friends who were helping me make this transition, right? If you grow up in a Spartan community, right, you're like by default going to become this guy here on the right. But if you don't, then how do you make that transition? Average of the 5 people you spend time with, we are absolutely and utterly blessed in the modern era, because this isn't just the people that you are locally surrounding yourself with. So you can choose, okay, who are the 5 people that I admire most, right? And I mentioned some of those names before for me, but some of the people that really helped me were Jordan Peterson and David Goggins and Ziz as well in the earlier days. And so these people helped me actually embrace my masculinity and recognize this is important, right? And they were the voice. It's like they were, in terms of these 2 sets of voices, these people are the ones who are over and over again saying this messaging on the right? You're not enough, but that's okay, right? You're not enough, but that's okay, because you have potential and it's your responsibility, right? You matter, your potential matters, your masculinity matters, and men and women are not the same. You as a young man have this, I don't know whether you want to say this God-given divine responsibility to go and become a provider protector so that women can have children, right? And start families. And so anyone who is giving me this type of messaging over here, it's like, nah, you're not in my circle of 5. It's not to say I'm going to completely and utterly cut you out, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time with you. And I'm going to be very, very conscious of like protecting my energy, and conscious of the kind of messaging that I'm feeding myself, right? I want more of this. And so what I would do is whenever I was in the gym, so I part of it was when I was in the gym, I'd have this sacred 1 to 2 hours, and I would just listen to these people. And it's like I would YouTube something like Jordan Peterson motivation, David Goggins motivation, Ziz motivation, whatever speech, and I just want to have that on repeat. I want to have it on loop. And again, it comes to, garbage in, garbage out. But the opposite of that is quality in, quality out. You get the idea. Quality. So if you can take control, right, of these 5 people via the modern era YouTube, right, podcasts, books, you can control on a consistent basis who are the 5 most prominent voices that you are feeding and conditioning your mind. And that's where I chose these people. And it's like a feedback loop, right? So that the more that I chose, these are the ideals to which I want to make my mindset more and more akin. I would then attract people into my social circle who also admire these people. And then it's like the 5 people that I actually had locally in close proximity, who I was spending time with in person, became more and more masculine, right? Their voices were more and more aligned with this on the right than this on the left, because I chose my inputs. I proactively conditioned, right? I chose my inputs. I proactively was conditioning my mindset to become more and more in alignment with that of Jordan Peterson, David Goggins, Ziz, that type energy. And then it's like your vibe attracts your tribe. And so I attracted then people who were more and more masculine and created social bonds with those people. And so you're going to make a choice between social kind of security, right? Who you're comfortable with versus your potential. Because not everyone that you are close with, right, is going to be on the same upward trajectory that you are. And you have to be okay with letting go. And again, that letting go being interpreted as an act of love, as opposed to, say, something like betrayal. All right. So once we have all of that down, it's like we've outlined the first 2 pillars. So mindset. Now we've done environmental, enviro, and it's kind of like lifestyle as well in terms of some of the habits and who you're choosing to surround yourself with. Third pillar is now we can focus on the kind of physique, right? And going from soy boy to jacked unit. And I'm going to break this down into both diet and workouts. All right, give me a second here. Alrighty, so these 2 people have very different diets and also very different workouts, and that manifests into this kind of difference in physique. But again, just remember that if you're just focused on making this kind of physique transformation, you don't want to get caught up focusing just on those specific or superficial skills, right? Unless you nail the right mindset and you also take control and become intentional with your environment, then it doesn't matter how much like information you soak up with respect to your macros and what you should and shouldn't be eating, or what's the best workout structure, all this, if you haven't got those underlying deep skills nailed, because you won't be able to execute on this properly. So look, diet-wise, let's start off with, first thing, like you have to let go of perfection. And like I said before, this can be used as an excuse to hit the fuck it button. If you have the standard of perfection and then you don't quite hit it, and then it's like it's either perfect or it's not, then you're just going to hit the fuck it button. you're gonna use perfection as an excuse to then default back into bitch mode. And so what you need to do is understand, right? There is no cheating here. There is no getting away with anything. Reality is going to come back to smack you in the face. You are not going to be perfect. And when you do fall off the horse, the best thing to do is get right back on. Right back on. And there are certain ways that you can make this easier. And I would say accountability, right? Any way that you can increase accountability, the better. So for example, ensuring that whenever I'll just give you some examples, right? And you don't have to follow this, but some of these I've found really helpful. Things like always eating with people where possible. So there's no meals where you can just become an absolute glutton and, obviously you're going to be eating by yourself sometimes, but we're designed to eat socially, and when we're with people, we're very intentional about the way that we eat, right? If you're eating like an absolute glutton, you're going to get some looks, and those looks are going to make you feel uncomfortable, and you're going to start eating how you know you should, as opposed to shoveling some bloody chocolate down your throat. So eating with people where possible, it's very much a social activity. Things like meditating or prayer before you eat, to just take a moment, settle your nervous system down, and ensure that you're not just gobbling so as to soothe. Instead, you're becoming very conscious of like, what does my body need? So there is an element of mindfulness here that can be really beneficial, even if you're not religious or anything like that. Okay, so get rid of perfection. Get right back on the horse when you fall off. You can use accountability to do this by ensuring you eat with people where possible. You implement some kind of ritual before you eat. I've heard of people also doing things like, you need to find what works best for you, yeah? I've heard of people taking photos of their food, and then everything that they eat, they have to send to somebody. And again, it's just increasing the intentionality on the food. And you know that someone's going to be holding you accountable, at least seeing what you're eating. So if it's absolute trash, then someone's going to be like, yo, dude, what are you doing? Okay. And everyone, just think of like that. We've all been here before, where we're eating a meal in front of the TV, and we're just like, if someone walked in and saw us eating what we're eating and the way that we're eating it and how unintentional, we're like a zombie eating in front of the TV, they would be like, what the heck? If it was like this girl that you're attracted to, they would instantly get the ick because of how you're shoveling this food into your mouth, like just zombie-like looking at the TV screen. And again, that's another thing, like, don't be watching TV while you're eating. That's not a hard and fast rule, but you don't want to be zombie-like, getting your little dopamine hit, while you're eating unconsciously. So you really want to pay attention to the food. Now, I've also found it really useful to actually, when I focus on just having the food in front of me, so notice how, like, I'm not giving you any hacks with respect to diet yet. We'll get to that in a bit, but it's like all of this stuff, this is the deeper skills. These are the deeper things that people just overlook. They type in YouTube, like, what's the best diet? And no wonder you can't stick to it. It's like, you haven't nailed any of this shit. So, I forgot my train of thought, what I was going to say next. Anyway, if it's important, it'll come back to me. So, with all of that said, right? Oh, and one more thing, actually, is you can also try going for walks before and after you eat, and even things like yoga or just some mild exercise, right? Like you might do some push-ups and mild exercise. Your body is an adaptable machine, right? There's going to be you're feeding it inputs, you're providing it structure, and it's going to adapt to that structure. If your body learns that before and after you eat, you go for a 10-minute walk, it's not going to shove its stomach full of food, right? Because it knows it's going to be incredibly uncomfortable going out and walking. So another thing, right? There are so many small things that stack on to make a very significant difference. Shirt off. This is going to be very uncomfortable for some of you to begin with, but you want to feel like, first of all, you can eat with your shirt off, and it just makes you acutely aware of the excess fat that you have on your body. And it also makes you acutely aware of everything that you're putting into your mouth. It's the same principle, garbage in, garbage out. Everything that you're putting into your mouth, it's going somewhere, man. And, like if you're not comfortable with the amount of fat on your belly, as an example, dude, it's going to go to your belly. So having your shirt off can just make you very, very self-aware and intentional with respect to what you're putting into your mouth. And this you don't just necessarily have to do this when you're eating. You can also do it like when you go for walks. This is what I do. When I go for walks, I will have my shirt off as much as possible. And part of it is for the sun exposure. I find that that's actually quite helpful with respect to regulating my appetite and regulating my stress levels. But also, having my shirt off makes me extremely accountable, right? If I have like a couple of weeks of bad eating where I'm not consistent, best believe that I'm not looking as impressive as I was before. And it doesn't even matter so much about how other people perceive me, but I feel less comfortable in my body. And it's because there's a recognition somewhere in my conscience that's going, bro, you know what? There's a physical reflection of your lack of discipline. And that's what you don't feel good about. It's not necessarily your body fat percentage. It's what the body fat percentage represents that you're not proud of or that you're shameful of. And rightly so, right? And again, you're forever inadequate. You're never enough. And that's the game that we are playing when we're trying to become this dude over here on the right. Okay. So let's kick on. I think those are like all of the things that I feel get commonly overlooked with respect to diet. I want to run you through some of the more technical side of things. That this is the kind of stuff that you can find on YouTube. This isn't designed to be like an A to Z on the perfect diet or anything like that. But I'm going to give you a rough idea of how I think about my diet and the diet that has worked really well for me for making that transition. So you want to establish rough maintenance. That's the first thing. So maintenance calories. What are your maintenance calories? Best way to do this is just eat what you usually eat and track it with a tool like MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal, again, like you can watch a plethora of YouTube videos that dive into this further. Eat like you usually would for a fortnight. Track everything that you eat in MyFitnessPal. Does not have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent with it. And consistent imperfection is completely fine, right? So like if you're eating, let's say you go out to this place and you buy, I don't know, like a wrap and you have no idea how much is in it. In MyFitnessPal, you can just find a generic wrap, which might be, I don't know, like 500 calories. And who knows the wrap that you're eating, it might actually be 600 calories. It might be 400 calories, right? As long as you're consistent with the imperfections, then at least you have a baseline from which to then operate. So it's actually not all that important that we effectively establish what your maintenance calories are. It's just that we establish a baseline from which to decide, are we going to now increase calories or decrease calories from this point? So we're establishing some general maintenance. That's going to take you about 2 weeks. Once you've done that, you're going to choose whether you're going to bulk or whether you're going to cut. It's best, like if you're holding a bit of extra fat, then you might want to cut first for a little bit, do a mini cut, and then bulk from there. But for this guy, I would say you can jump straight into a bulk, bro, as long as you don't do it too hard. So you don't want to go on too much of a dirty bulk and then just use that as an excuse to become fat. But what I would recommend is taking whatever your maintenance calories are, taking 10 to 20%, and either adding or subtracting depending on whether you're going to go into a cut or a bulk. And minimum, I would either cut or bulk for a minimum of eight weeks, right? Like that's a good block. So once we've established that, then from there it's just monitoring. Okay, so you got to monitor and you got to be consistent. Monitor again with MyFitnessPal. You have to let go of that standard of perfection. Okay, from here. Let's say, I'd say the hardest part, right? When you're bulking, you get the calories in, and you might have to opt for low volume foods, right? So high calorie foods that have a lot of calories, very densely packed in. Things like peanut butter, and nuts and whatnot, like very high fat content, lots of carbs. You might even go for more refined carbs, like breads and pastries and all that. The flip side, when you're cutting, you want to go for generally speaking, higher volume foods, right? Things that'll give you that sense of satiation more easily. And a rule of thumb, just go for unprocessed and natural. Fruit, veggies, meat, right? Those should be your staples. Now, when it comes to cutting or bulking, I would recommend working based off macros. You might have heard, like, if it fits your macros, it's a very flexible diet plan. It's not like, okay, you can only eat these 5 things, you can only eat those 5 things. I would recommend, however, if you're really prioritizing this, find a routine that works for you. So I pretty much, like, when I was going through this transformation, I, like 90% of the time, I ate the same meals. I knew what I was going to have for breakfast. I knew what I was going to have for lunch. I knew what I was going to have for dinner. And I knew that I could consistently stay at that surplus or at that deficit. I found what worked, and then I stuck with it, and then I had mild variation. So it's a very conservative approach as opposed to, let me just wing it. That might work for you, just wing it, but it does not work, or it did not work for me, for sure. So macros, for me, when I'm cutting, I'm going to have a 40-40-20 split. So this is going to be 40% of my calories are going to come from protein, 40% are going to come from carbs, and 20% are going to come from fats. Now, this was like a rough goal. I found that when I'd hit these macros, I was able to maintain a calorie deficit fairly consistently. Sometimes I'd increase my fats a little bit. I tend to be like willing to do that. You need to find what works best for you. If you take this and you just copy paste it for yourself, you might actually find you struggle to remain, say, in a deficit with this ratio. And so you might need to like up your fats and decrease your carbs, or you might find you need to, decrease your carbs a little bit and increase your protein. Whatever it is, you got to find what works for you. But I'm just sharing with you what worked for me to begin with from the jump. Or I suppose what I found to work over time. Okay, now this also applies, generally speaking, to the different kind of diet. Come on now. Yeah, the different kind of diets. That whiteboard is having a little aneurysm over here. The different kind of diets that you might try, right? So you can try intermittent fasting. You can try paleo. You can try keto, whatever it is. But what I will just say real quick is that you have to find what works for you, and you might actually have to experiment. I think this largely has to do with your genes, and over the eons, what have you and your ancestors evolved to eat? And so you have to find what works best for you. So I've tried intermittent fasting, right? Give me a second. I'm just going to reset the iPad over here. All right, and we're back. So I found over the years, whenever I've toyed with intermittent fasting, for some people, I've heard this work absolutely great and they get sick results. For me, I ended up binging, right? I'd be fine in the morning, but then I would really, really struggle in the evening to stay in a deficit. Whereas now what I do, I have a very high carb breakfast, right? I'll like load my carbs up in the morning. I'll have like 700 to 800 calories, predominantly carbs like muesli, fruits, etc. And then I'll have a lunch that is very high in protein, and then a dinner that is very high in protein. Right? That's kind of like a formula that has worked really well for me. And this is like very meat-based, usually like a tuna salad of some sort. And this is very meat-based as well, a steak of some sort with like a little bit of fruit and a little bit of vegetables. This is what works for me. That might not work for you. And so you have to go into this with a certain degree of adaptability, okay? Now, I might also add here, like you might have zero interest in this physique side of things or this diet side of things. I would still recommend using diet as a playground for discipline. It's like maybe you don't, like if you're, whatever you're going to do, whatever goal you're trying to attain, it's going to require a degree of suffering and a degree of discipline and sacrifice. And how do you develop that? If not in the gym and with your diet and with things like just controlling your impulses, like your impulse to watch porn, something like that. It's like if you can't control your impulse to watch porn, if you can't overcome that, what makes you think you're going to have any power in the world to do anything of importance? So I think one one quote that just hit me the other day was like, man conquers the world by first conquering himself, something like that. And I think that really applies here. And one of the ways, or one of the areas where you can practice conquering yourself and integrating all those disparate impulses within you into a single unity that moves towards the good or to your ideal is take a look at your diet, like really own it and become a master of being able to leverage and attend to your diet and have like really clean it up. Okay, so a couple more things. Caffeine, you might hear a lot about caffeine being helpful, which is true. It can be helpful in being somewhat of an appetite suppressant, but I'll just share with you that you don't want to overdo it because it can like completely screw your sleep. And I've been there, I've done that. When you screw your sleep, it can screw with your hormones, which regulate your appetite. And I don't know whether you guys have noticed this, but if I have too much caffeine and then I don't sleep well, then it bleeds into my appetite regulation the next day, and it's much harder to stay in a deficit. So getting really important sleep is very important, and you don't want to overdo the caffeine. The caffeine can also make you a bit of a dopamine junkie, and like I just need my next hit of dopamine, and sometimes we can look for that in food. So you can use caffeine, but don't overdo it. Same applies for pre-workout. You can use pre to kind of regulate your appetite a little bit. So for example, like after my really carb-heavy breakfast, I'd usually have that at like 8 a.m. or something like that. Then I would wait until about midday. I'd then take pre, head to the gym, and then I'd break. It's like breaking a fast, kind of. Like I'm really on an empty stomach. I'd have my lunch after the workout at like 2 o'clock. So I haven't eaten between 8 a.m. and roughly 2 p.m. And that's been helped by having either some caffeine in this block over here or between brekkie and lunch, and then also potentially having some pre that can help with that as well. So again, you got to find what works for you. Another tip that I found really helpful is sun exposure. Sun exposure just seems to play a big role in regulating the hormones that are related to appetite. So you can look into like ghrelin. What's the other one called? I think it starts with L. But you want to be conscious. It's not just a matter of discipline. It's also a matter of strategy and management of your hunger hormones by way of sleep, by way of your blood sugar levels, by way of when you're eating, by way of what you're eating, by way of what you're drinking. I mentioned sun. Also just general movement. This can also help in regulating those hormones, which then feed into your diet. So there's a number of considerations. It really is a lifestyle. So mild cardio, general movement. I've touched on doing abs. I've touched on having my shirt off and using that as accountability. Another one is like doing abs. When you do abs at the gym and you've eaten or you've blown out on like a diet of some sort, dude, you're going to feel fat as hell. And so a really good way to keep yourself accountable is do abs every single session, or just a little bit every single day. And you'll notice, right, you become really self-conscious in the best way possible of the excess fat that you have around your waist. Okay. And the last thing is just set a goal. A goal date. Sorry, I should be more specific there. Now, this is a bit cliche, but it is nice to be like, all right, cool. I'm going to stick to this deficit for 8 weeks. And I know that there's going to be an end date so that when things get really tough, if you've got a lot of momentum, you can just go, okay, man, I'm almost there. 2 more weeks, stick with it. Whereas if it's an indefinite thing, then it kind of feels like, I'm not sure how much I can sustain this for, and it lets you off the hook a little bit. So I would recommend locking in some kind of date where you want to go, okay, either you want to have a photo shoot or you share it with a friend like I shared with my sisters. Okay, by this day, I want to be in the absolute best shape of my life. Boom. And I made it happen. And I knew that they were going to check in with me on a fairly regular basis, like, how's the diet going? How's the workouts going? And I didn't want to say, I've been a bitch, pretty much, or I haven't stuck with it. Now, one more thing. Having said that, right, like if my sleep was cooked, or I screwed up my sleep, I knew that it was going to be really difficult the next day sticking to calories and sticking to my diet. And also having like really intense workouts, which I'll get to in a bit. So what I would then do is I would switch my mentality. If I tried to stick to my calories, I would then fail a lot of the time if I'd slept really poorly. And then I would hit the fuck it button because I had this excuse of perfection. If I can't hit perfection, then fuck it, it's not going to happen. And so what I did instead was whenever I would get a really bad night's sleep, I would go, okay, this is going to be a delay on me hitting my goal, but I'm going to bump things back up to maintenance. So I'd bump my cals back up, and I would mentally just treat that day as I'm going to give myself a bit of, it's almost like going to be like a refeed day back at maintenance. And that way I wouldn't let myself go using the excuse of perfection. And I found that to be very, very useful. So hopefully that's useful for you as well. Okay, so that's kind of all of the disparate tips and advice that I have with respect to managing your diet when it comes to cutting, but also to bulking and not letting things get out of control on the bulk. Because we can, I think a lot of you lads who have bulked before know how easy it is to hit that hard bulk a little too hard. Now, when it comes to workouts, there's just no excuse for anything but high intensity, right? And you should be one of the hardest working people in the gym, and you should have that as your goal. Like what I mentioned before, this guy, right, I had a reputation, right? By the time I became this guy, I'd established a culture with myself where I wouldn't feel, and with my training partner as well, I would not feel good about myself unless I was the hardest working in the gym. And it should be obvious, right? Like people should see you and almost feel intimidated by your work ethic. Now, that's not something you'll be able to nail from the jump. It's something that you got to practice. But if you're doing what I mentioned before, right, where you've got Goggins in your ear at the gym, where is it? Right, where I was talking about inputs and outputs. Whenever I went to the gym, a lot of the time I'd throw, even someone like Anthony Robbins or Tony Robbins, I would throw someone like that on in my ear, and dude, I could not do a bitch set and get away with it because Goggins is in my voice saying who's going to carry the motherfucking boats, and so you gotta make sure the intensity there. If you don't have the intensity, you could have like the perfect program from the perfect trainer, and I know people like this, right? Oh, I've got a personal trainer, and like, oh, I've got a program, whatever. And it's like, dude, you train like a bitch. Let's just put it simply. You train like a bitch. And another person without a program who just has that intensity is going to make so much more progress than you. So there's really no substitute for intensity. It's like, again, it's almost like an 80-20 principle here, or it's more like a 96-4. Like people focus on the 4% of stuff that doesn't really matter, which might be like, oh, let me get the most fine-tuned program, which exercise, how many reps, my progressive overload, etc. And it's like, dude, you are skipping out on the 96% of what matters, which is literally just hitting the gym hard. And it's not something, like I mentioned, that is going to happen straight away. You're going to establish a culture with yourself, and then over time, it's going to become the status quo. You won't be able to work out with anything less than like a hardcore intensity. Now, with that said, you want to be able to work out 3 to 6 times a week, depending on your schedule and whatnot. Intensity has to be high. You want Goggins in your head. I really like the structure of push, pull, and legs. Rinse and repeat. I'm going to let you look into that. Some other really good ones, a 5x5 that you might consider. But you're going to be able to, you want to find what works best for you. And also you want to design your program based on the physique that you want, right? If you want something like less bulky than this guy, maybe you want like a physique that's more classic calisthenics, then you're going to go to someone like Chris Herrier. Whereas if you want something a bit more bulky like this, you're going to go and learn from the people who have the physique that you want. So maybe that's another kind of tip here is choose the physique that you actually want. This was the physique that I wanted, right? I used to see Ziz and go, dude, if I can have a physique anywhere near Ziz, I am like right as rain. I've hit the jackpot, and I'm pretty damn close in that respect now. And I might just add, yeah, like this guy, when I was younger, even like before this, I would have seen someone like this and just thought like, that is not possible, or he's on roids, right? And I want to include this to mention that all you need to do to start with is believe that you could be more, and then just start working towards it, and like let go of I have to be looking like that by this time. See if you can fall in love with the process, and then like you actually don't know how much potential you have. I see some people who are like some lads who are starting out in the gym. They're skinny as heck, and they don't really see their own potential. And I see like the raw building blocks of their physique, and I'm like, I can think of someone in particular right now. I'm like, dude, you're skinny as heck, and you don't know that you're going to become a unit with like 3 years of work in the gym. But I can already tell that your physique will easily outcompete mine if you put in the same amount of work and the same amount of effort and consistency because of your frame. And so it's just interesting to me that we can often see the potential in other people, but we can't see the potential in ourselves. And so if that might be you, dude, just let go and anchor your sense of motivation, self-esteem, etc. in making the transition from bitch to beast, right? And not so much, oh, how am I looking compared to so-and-so? You got to run your own race to a degree. Last of all, make it fun. So I did this 5x5 program for quite some time, and I just really, I fell out of love with it. What I do now is I'll have 2 compound movements that I'll hit at the beginning of every workout. I do a push-pull legs variation, push-pull legs, rinse and repeat. If I can only hit it 5 times a week, then I'll do like push-pull legs, and then maybe like an arms, and then maybe a calisthenics day, right? Where I'll do like push-ups, pull-ups, dips, something like that. So you can begin to play around with it over time. But again, it's like the main thing is my intensity is through the roof. I am the hardest working in the gym. And if anyone wants to challenge me on that, then like I look forward to it. Now, beyond that as well. So yeah, if you fall out of love, you got to make it sustainable. And so for me, I had 2 compound movements. 1 second, guys. Battery's about to run out. And we're back. So I run with 2 main compound movements. So compound movements are the ones which recruit a lot of muscle groups. So things like bench and all of the variations of bench. So you've got like incline, decline. You got a machine as well, or deadlifts, or squats, or rows, right? And you can look into all of these if this is kind of new for you. But I'm going to have 2 compound exercises where I'm going to do between 3 to 5 sets of between 6 to 8 reps. Right? So this is kind of where I'm hitting that hardcore strength, whilst also getting a bit of hypertrophy and muscle building. And again, like I'm structuring this based on the physique that I want, right? Which is like muscular, but also very athletic. Whereas if you want to be like a strongman, like solely a strongman, you'll probably drop your reps and have a slightly different program, be a bit more regimented with it, perhaps. But then from here, once I've hit my 2 core compound movements, I have fun. So I'll hit another 2 to 3 exercises, and I'll do between 8 to 12 reps. So I'll increase the reps. I'll get more of a pump and more of a burn. And I'll have some fun. I like getting into play mode in the gym and just following what I feel like doing. Like what's an exercise I haven't done in a while that I love the feeling of. And like it just makes me think of that clip in Pumping Iron where Arnie is like, it's like I get to calm all day. And it's like when you fall in love with the process and you find those exercises and you start to stack on a bit of muscle, man, you will start to enjoy the process. And that's really when you know you're going to become this dude and it's going to become sustainable. This is probably a good place to begin wrapping up, right? Is when you have successfully nailed the mindset or the mental, right? You are consistently, let's come back to here. You're consistently reinforcing this messaging. You understand that you are not enough, but you're opting into the game of self-improvement. You understand that you matter on like a cosmic level. You also understand that your masculinity is important to manifest, and you understand that men and women are not the same, and that for women to have children, if you believe in women who want children being able to have children, you are part of that process where you need to become strong and masculine. If you believe all of that and you're nailing that mindset element and you're installing that mindset via controlling your environment doing a dopamine detox, getting rid of all of the bad habits, lifestyle habits that screw with the underlying hardware that make it impossible to install this software, this mindset, right? You get rid of the porn, you get rid of the non-stop death scrolls, you get rid of all of the short, like novelty, quick novelty that makes you an instant gratification, like little bloody rat instead of a stoic who's able to hold his ground in the modern era. And then you're ready to really dial in the physique. And again, like you don't have to shoot for exactly what I've done. I've just kind of shared with you my mentality for making that transition. But you could have a slightly different physique. You might follow a different program, but hopefully you will have found some of those principles beneficial. And you could tie that all together in a program that suits you. And you use it as, it's like, it doesn't finish here, right? It's like nailing the physique the physique is just a mirror of this. It's like the thing I'm most proud of in this guy is not even his physique. It's what the physique represents. And it represents all of this, right? Like I love the fact that I'm okay with never being enough, right? Like that's welcome to manhood. I know that I matter, and I know that I can't just be some fat glutton that masturbates on the couch, right? Like that is not okay. That is sinful. That is immoral. And it's not okay, not just for me, but for the universe and for the future and for the people that matter in my life, for my family, for my sisters, for my mother, for my father. I dishonor them by thinking that nothing really matters and like I can just, masturbate away and eat whatever I feel like and just don't do anything of significance in my life. I understand that my masculinity matters, and I understand that if I actually care about women and children, it's important that I become a strong provider, protector, and the first place to begin, right? Man conquers the world by first conquering himself. So, guys, with that, I hope that you found this video somewhat helpful and you can take a little gem or a nugget of advice here or there and apply it to your own transformation. But if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to help out wherever I can.